right, everybody. We are live, I think. I think we're live. Did it say we're live? Yes. All right. Okay, thanks everybody for coming tonight, and for those of you online joining us. We've got a good little presentation here tonight on staking. Before that, we've got the Nouns Run is on Saturday, so if you want to run, 12 o'clock noon at meet outside of Cactus Club at Cold Harbor. And then next week we've got, I think ZK Research is back, so anybody that's looking to get their ZK on, meet here 6:30 on Wednesday. And then some other upcoming stuff. We've got, there's going to be a Linea ZK event on April 13th. The location is about to be disclosed soon. And then Solana Vancouver is going to be hosting a meetup here on the 24th as well. So a few things to kind of look forward to, and hopefully see you all here. What else do we got?
On there. Modularity Day next week with Celestia.
Perfect. And what that's
should be EthVan.
Oh,
Thursday.
so that's what our next EthVan is. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next EthVan, Celestia, they're sponsoring food and drinks as well.
So you want to be here for that. We're going to get modular.
Oh yeah, Celestia is also doing merch airdrop.
Ooh-wee.
So,
all right. So yeah, we'll see you guys all next week too. All right. Well, we've got Zach with us here today. I'll let you take it away, and let's we dive into staking.
Thank you, Tangle. Hello, everyone. My name's Zach. I'm here to talk today about staking, which is an area of the industry very relevant to Ethereum. I'm sure there's been talks about it here before. Ignoring the fancy title, it's just going to dive into some of the mechanics behind how staking works, not just in Ethereum, but other protocols as well. And then some of the opportunities for individuals, developers, people that can look at staking and how they can gain from it, as well as some of the risks around it. And then just a bit of the trend in the industry as well. A bit about myself. I'm originally from the UK, you may be able to tell. And I moved here 2 years ago after a stint in Shanghai, which is where I first came across crypto. And I joined a company in 2018 in a BD role, transitioned into product, which is what I do now at Binance US. We have an office here in Canada, but most of the team are in the US, of course. And part of that was I was tasked with building the staking business up there in early 2022, including the product. So that's a centralized staking platform. But of course, a lot of the staking activity is done through decentralized platforms now and liquid staking protocols primarily. So what is staking? I'm sure many of you here are familiar. Who here has actually participated in staking before? If anyone? Yep, most of the people. On this side, maybe fewer. Who is aware of the context of this picture? Julian, since you got the mic.
Yeah, it's Gary explaining staking when Ethereum actually migrated to proof of stake.
Yeah. A bit of a villain in the industry, I would say. Definitely put a bit of a stick up my ass with our program in the US. He runs the Securities and Exchange Commission, and they have gone after a lot of the centralized crypto platforms, including ours, for staking, saying that it's a security. And there's an ongoing legal battle now with Coinbase and some other companies. So I just bring this picture up to kind of contextualize that this is a evolving industry, even though it's grown to, I think, over $700 billion. It's still heavily in contention with some of the regulators. And I think they are starting to look at some of the wallets and decentralized protocols such as Lido as well. So it's something interesting. It's still developing. But yeah, going back to what is staking, in simple terms, staking is locking up your crypto to support the security and transaction validation of a blockchain network. The stake crypto is tied to the performance of a validator node, and in return, stakers earn rewards in kind. So you stake ETH, you can earn ETH. But if a validator node acts maliciously, tries to double sign a transaction or include a transaction that is illegitimate, that will be noticed by the network and penalized, which creates a dual incentive kind of mechanism. We'll talk about a bit more. But first, particularly in Ethereum, you've seen that since the Ethereum beacon chain launched in December 2020, the total value locked has grown to well over just over 100 billion today. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of locked ETH. I think it's over 30 something % of the total ETH in circulation. But sorry. It might be better. Hello? Yeah. Do you want to take that? Yeah. And you can see there's over, I'd say there's well over 100 now that use a form of staking as its consensus mechanism. Not just proof of stake, but there's variants. Ethereum is the largest, but there 10 listed here, and you can see that the market caps for those are all fairly sizable. Yeah, this is taken from today, and those percentage increases, except for the one at the top, are year on year. So Ethereum's staking market cap is almost tripled. So talking about proof of stake, it's hard to do that without first contextualizing it around proof of work, which is the original consensus mechanism behind Bitcoin. They're similar in their goal, which is to provide security to a network, but very different in their mechanisms. So as with proof of work, the nodes, the computers that operate in the network, referred to as miners commonly, try to solve a puzzle by essentially brute forcing a solution to a cryptographic problem. They need to derive a string with a certain number of zeros at the front of it, and all they're doing is using computers to try over and over until they get a result that satisfies that criteria, and then that allows them to be the one node on the network that gets to propose that next block, including all those transactions and the fees that they earn because of it. Proof of stake works more on a lottery basis. So all the nodes, in this case, in proof of stake, they're referred to as validators, not miners, have to have a certain amount of crypto staked to them to act as kind of a security deposit or collateral. If they do that, they're eligible to be selected to validate a block. That's usually done randomly. Some protocols do not do it randomly, they do it based on a set sequence. But the gist is that it's done not through, you're not earning the right to validate a block based on computational power. You're earning the right by providing stake and then being eligible to be selected. Once you are selected, you can validate a block. So that works such as this. And in the happy scenario, if nothing goes wrong, the owner of the crypto stakes their tokens in a staking pool or to a node. The algorithm of the network randomly selects the next validator to validate a block. Once they've validated the block, selecting the transactions to include, the other validators verify that that was done legitimately, that there was no malicious act, and they approve the transactions within that block. And then that block gets added to the blockchain, and similar to Bitcoin, after a certain number of blocks have passed, that's considered final and won't be reversed. However, there is a sort of period of time after that block is created that other validators could try to identify that that block was validated illegitimately, that they included a transaction that is not legal, so as to say. And then once you validate a block, you earn rewards in the form of transaction fees or new issuance of tokens that come with every block. But if it went wrong, you'd see the difference in step 4 that the other validators would sort of whistleblow. They would provide evidence that that block was wrong, and that block wouldn't get added to the blockchain. In fact, there would be another node nominated to create a block, and that validator would be kicked, or they would be slashed, which is a penalty that happens when you validate a block incorrectly. So I want to talk through all the different mechanisms within staking that make it work. There's positive incentives and there's disincentives, negative incentives. The main positive incentive is obviously rewards, so earning the fees or issuance of new tokens from the blocks that get created. That is your yield. If you're staking, you're doing that to earn yield on your tokens. It's passive income in most cases. But the other side of that is if your validator node misbehaves, it gets slashed. And that only really happens purposefully. There can be some issues with the software of the nodes, but mostly this happens when someone's trying to submit a transaction to try and game the network, to try and cheat the network. Depending on the protocol, you can also be locked out. So if you got slashed, you might be kicked out from ever participating again or for a period of time. That's just another one of the disincentives that they use. There's also time-bound mechanisms. So with staking, you can't immediately stake and unstake. You have to wait in some cases. And that is commonly referred to as the bonding period when you're staking, or the unbonding period when you're unstaking. Not all networks have this, but many do. And in particular with Ethereum, there's also a queue mechanism to kind of slow down the rate at which people can withdraw from the ETH staking protocol or to stake in, and that varies. And beyond that, there's also other factors, such as you have to have a minimum amount to stake. With staking on Ethereum, you need 32 ETH. That's a problem that has grown as ETH has become more valuable. It's created a barrier to entry. And so solutions have been developed, such as liquid staking protocols like Lido, to try and make it more accessible. But that comes with different risks and nuances. There's also limitations to who can participate in certain blockchain networks. Ethereum is very permissionless in that if you have 32 ETH, you can participate. But with other networks, there's very high barriers to entry in terms of the amount you have to stake. BNB chain, for example, it's in the realm of tens of millions of dollars per node needs to be staked to be eligible to participate. There's also an aspect of governance involved with staking. So if you are staking, you can then be eligible to vote on protocols and proposals within that network that may change how it works or affect changes in the actual makeup of that protocol itself. And then there's a concept of maximal extractable value, MEV, which is the idea of optimizing the transactions you include or don't include in a block, and the order in which they're included so that you get the most rewards possible. So you actually might want to create blocks differently, and that's kind of a software element that a lot of companies in this industry are trying to work on to get the most rewards as possible. And then just to illustrate the differences, these are 5 very well-known blockchains, and you can see the differences in the requirements, the bonding and unbonding periods, and the reward rates. The reward rates you can kind of think of as an APR, APY. In general, the bigger the blockchain, the more stake to it, the lower the reward rate will be. It works similar to a market in that the more people demanding to stake, the lower the rewards fall because they're being distributed among a larger group of participants. And just to illustrate that, you can see with Ethereum, since really around the merge until today, that rate went up and went down. And that's because there was more activity at certain periods of the market that led to more transaction fees being available, and then also because that led to more ETH being staked, as demonstrated by the light blue graph. As more ETH has been staked, that reward has fallen back down to around 3.5% today. There are a lot of risks with staking, but I still think it's relatively lower risk than lending out your assets to earn yield. Just because when you're lending out assets, there's a credit risk of the counterparty defaulting, and that's something that staking does not necessarily have. But depending on how you stake, you could be at risk if you're staking through a centralized platform. This happened with, well, similarly with Gemini and their Earn program. All of the people participating in that have not yet got their crypto back. We all probably are aware of the FTX kind of collapse, and this is something that you need to be aware of. Similarly, when you're staking through self-custody, you have to be aware that you're in charge of not losing those keys, but you're in power there. Slashing is something we talked about a bit. That's the penalty. If your validator node that you're staking to misbehaves, you can lose the principal that you've staked. And a lot of times, you as an individual, and most of the individuals staking are not running the validator themselves. They're nominating or delegating to a third party that's running the validator. So you have to trust that operator of that validator node to do so without any issues. They're incentivized to do so because they're earning rewards too, but that is a risk you have to be aware of. And then there's some common risks like liquidity risk. When you're staking, your assets are not available to sell right away. Market risk. If you're holding Ethereum anyway, you're bound to the market risk of Ethereum, but you're also subject to the prices going up and prices going down. But staking just allows you to earn yield at the same time. Depending on how you stake too, there's smart contract risks, Lido. There could be an issue with newer protocols more commonly. When you're staking, just be careful how you're staking, and that those protocols have been tried and tested, that they've been audited and their code is sound with no vulnerabilities. And then with all networks, there's still a security risk. Proof of stake is a mechanism to try to make the protocol secure, just as proof of work is. But if one individual were to gain control of 51% of all of the staked ETH in the network, they could, in theory, create blocks with transactions that are in their interest. They could take money or create transactions that were not legitimate. And so that's still a risk. And that's a risk really in Ethereum because two big players have centralized control over so many validator nodes that they actually have over 50% share in the market, and that's Lido and Coinbase. And if you take Lido, Coinbase, and maybe Binance, they have even more, like 60% of the market. So there is still risk there, and people talk about that as being one of the problems with staking. Regulatory risks, we don't know what will happen in the US or Canada where we can participate in staking going forward, or what controls are put in place. And then I think the biggest risk in crypto is phishing scams. So just be careful that you're going to the correct website to stake rather than a fake one. People will create these fake websites that look the same. You have to check the URL is the right one. So yeah, lots of risks to be aware of, but don't be too scared. Cool. Yeah, and just simply how it kind of works is obviously you have to own the crypto you want to stake. And then there are a few ways you can do it. I don't have a demo today. It would have been a bit cumbersome to do, but the most direct way is you get a crypto wallet with the crypto you want to stake, and you connect directly to the web app of the staking protocol. So you can go to bnbchain.org or Solana, Avalanche. They have their own apps where you can connect and stake. They will explain the requirements if you need a certain minimum amount, etc. And that's a direct way to do it. That's the way you're paying the least fees to another party. You can connect via kind of wallets that have it built into them. So Ledger Live have this built in where you can stake Ethereum from there, and they make it a bit simpler. They kind of smooth out the process, but they are taking some of the fees, a small amount in the middle there. Coinbase Wallet do the same, and Trust Wallet and others. Or you can use a centralized platform. Again, that comes with counterparty risks. Coinbase are very reputable. Binance are one of the biggest as well. You have to be careful to make sure that you're aware of the risk there. I have personally done so through all of these at different times. Once you've chosen the platform you're going to stake through, you also need to choose the validator that you're going to stake to. Companies like Coinbase and Binance run their own, and there are some big companies that do this for institutions. Kiln and Figment are ones that we work with that are very solid, but do your own research. Or you can run your own validator, which just means you need to purchase the hardware and understand how to set it up and keep it running. You have to keep it running at all times, or there's a risk in some cases of being slashed. And finally, once you're on that platform and you've chosen the validator to stake to, it will walk you through the steps to sign that transaction message. And once that's done, you're staked. Yeah, and that's really the walkthrough of staking in itself. But there are some other interesting topics to touch on. One is liquid staking. I've personally seen this grow from the start of Lido being launched, and now it is the main way that people are staking Ethereum, or it's got the most market share. The way that works is you're staking into a pool through a smart contract that gives you a token in return that represents your share in that pool. And the total ETH staked through all the participants is staked in batches of 32, as every node needs 32 ETH. And then you're able to withdraw from that pool without having the full 32 ETH. Another topic this year is Ethereum ETFs. So there's some, the market's had a lot of movements since Bitcoin ETFs were approved in the US. They've been in Canada for a while. But there's also many companies applying for the Ethereum ETFs, and some with staking as a component. So you would also be able to earn staking as a participant in that. And then restaking is something newer that I think will allow you to earn additional yield. It remains to be seen how well it will work. There's a lot of ETH that has been staked to these restaking protocols, particularly Eigenlayer. And I think that will be the next stage in this industry. Yeah. That's really all I prepared today. Any questions from anyone? Yep. Now we have to have the mics.
Can you explain the Lido? Who's running the nodes?
Yeah, well, with Lido, I believe they're working with some of the enterprise-grade node operators, so like Blockdaemon, Figment, or Kiln, but I don't know in particular which one.
So you can't participate as with your hardware in that. You can only
Like contribute your own hardware to it?
So it's not distributed anyway.
No, I believe Rocket Pool is distributed as opposed to Lido. Yeah. Does anyone know?
Last I checked, you had to be approved by the DAO
Okay, yeah.
to join Lido as an operator. I never tried.
Yeah, it's like federated rather than distributed. So if you're approved by the DAO, you can become one of the designated like validators. But there's only a few people approved.
Yeah. Another thing with that is also the validator client software. If you're all using the same software client, there's a risk that could be exploited. So there's a bit of pressure for some of these companies to diversify that, and some have started to publicize that they're diversifying the clients they're using to avoid that risk.
So you're like referring to like the Geth kind of
Yeah.
majority.
Yeah.
Hey there. I'm curious about what your thoughts are on where we evolve from here for tokens like Steth and all the derivatives of ETH, how they gravitate over to the layer 2s and are useful in those ecosystems. Because right now I feel like most of the derivatives are all just still present on mainnet, and curious where that flow is. I know Mantle is having like a very interesting yield aspect to it right now to get METH like quite predominant there. But where are your eyes like looking in terms of, like, is it Blaster? I mean, I know that's almost like a meme maybe right now, but what are your thoughts on how we move to layer 2s?
Yeah, Blast had a lot of fun recently, didn't they? Yeah, the way I think about liquid stake tokens is they're liquid assets that can be used as collateral on other platforms or traded, lent out. People want to have the benefit of a derivative of their locked ETH, and so there's a lot of value in that. It's not exactly equivalent to the value of pure ETH, but you can bridge those kind of assets over to layer 2s and use them as collateral in other protocols.
I was curious, what's the latest update on the spat with the regulators? I know Binance and a bunch of other exchange actually left Canada last year. I was curious, like, and if there's any updates on that. What are some of the ongoing stories that we need to kind of keep our tabs on?
I think Coinbase were just approved for a license in Canada, like today or yesterday. In Binance's case, I know they were trying to work on that. There's just some, it's not been easy to get the approvals. I don't actually work at Binance Global. I work at Binance US. We've had some issues in the US with the SEC. That's where that picture is up there. They're alleging that the staking programs that are offered by Coinbase and us and some other companies are securities offerings. And so there's a bit of a battle going on. I can't really comment too much on it, but I know that the latest update is for Coinbase's case, they tried to get that dismissed, and the judge ruled against the dismissal. There was a positive note to that in that there was another complaint against their like self-custody wallet, Coinbase wallet, that did get dismissed, which is generally positive, but we'll have to see how the court battle goes and see what happens in the end.
Could you explain what like a fundamental difference is between centralized staking and non-centralized, like Lido versus Coinbase? Is it the only difference is that the validators are chosen by Coinbase as opposed to, I think someone just said what was it, Lido, or the other one where the DAO selects?
Yeah, so if you're staking from your own self-custody wallet, there's no one else able to control the assets, and you're connecting your wallet to the staking protocols directly and creating a staking transaction that you sign with a private key on your device. And that broadcasts it to the network. That's more decentralized, right? There's no intermediary. With centralized staking, you're depositing your crypto to or buying crypto on a platform like Coinbase or Binance, and they're in control of the crypto. It's their wallets. When you're staking in their apps, you're basically telling them to stake it, and they're staking it for you. In most cases, they're running the nodes themselves or choosing the node to stake to. So they're capturing some fees, but the benefit is if you're not familiar with how to do the self-custody route, it's kind of abstracted away for you. You don't have to choose the node. You don't have to figure out how to connect or all those complexities. So it's a trade-off for convenience, but with the risk of, you're trusting them to do it for you.
In regards to the fees for custodian liquid staking tokens, like I know with Coinbase, it's like 25%. I don't know what Binance's is. What's Binance at, for example, as well?
25%.
It's also 25%. Do you see or do you expect that to kind of come down to try and it just seems like that's really high.
It's high.
Yeah. And I guess just as like you were alerted to with like the convenience and the simplicity of it to do it, I don't know. I'm just curious if they've discussed that or thought about it, or if they just feel like there's enough people doing it that we're just keep it as is.
Yeah. I don't want to speak to the price sensitivity of centralized stake like platform users, but they're definitely less price sensitive customer base.
Right.
And the reality is, if they were to learn how to do it through directly staking from a self-custody wallet, they could save on those fees. You'd still do pay fees to the validator operators if you're delegating, but it's usually in the range of 5 to 10%.
Right. Okay.
Wait, so does that mean like every time I put in 1 ETH, 25% of that goes as fees?
No. Your principal that you're staking might be 1 ETH, but every day or every epoch, every period of time you earn rewards, 25% of the reward is taken to the platform that you're staking through. That's the extreme. Usually maybe lower on that if you're staking directly, 5% or 2% even. I've seen it be as low as. There's actually, it's a market. So when you're looking at the validator, you're looking at their performance. Have they ever been slashed? You don't really want that. But historically, what rate have they been earning? And they can increase that by doing this process called MEV, which I talked about a bit. And you're also looking at the fee they're charging. So they may choose to charge a lower fee because they want to incentivize you to stake to them so that they can earn money. So it's a market that you have to look at the different factors. Yeah, and you can choose to go to Coinbase, but they'll charge you 25%. But it's very easy to do.
With the growth of like liquid staking and Binance, Coinbase, most have a liquid staked token version. How do you see fragmentation of liquidity kind of moving forward? Do you think that there's any appetite in consolidating liquid staking assets at all, or are we just going to have 100 versions of staked ETH moving forward?
Yeah, it's a market where there'll be competition, right? And that we should encourage competition. If there's one monopoly provider, they'll just charge higher fees. So I don't know that fragmentation is a bad thing, especially when you can exchange assets quite quickly and efficiently. It's similar to stablecoins as well. There are multiple US dollar stablecoins. They're doing the same thing. They're competing with each other, and that's probably a good thing.
Awesome. Anything else? Last question. So go ahead.
You spoke a little bit about slashing. Is the maximum value that an operator can lose, is it 32 ETH, or can they lose more than that?
The maximum you can lose is the amount you've staked in total, but each different network has a slightly different rule set for how they slash. Some are done automatically, some require like an actual vote in the process, and it's usually like done on a severity. There's some cases where it's kind of accidental and they'll only penalize you a small amount, and some where it's a very, there's rules. With Ethereum in particular, there's actually a rule where the larger the share of the network that tries to validate a transaction or approve. So with Ethereum, like one node is validating the transaction, the rest are like approving it, basically. The more that collude to approve a bad transaction, the larger they get, the more they get slashed. It's not linear. It's kind of a curve. Hard to explain.
So as someone who's not operating a node, it's my job to select an operator that's not going to get slashed.
Yeah. And again, each network has different rules. Some don't even have slashing. You just kind of lose rewards for a while. You get put in jail, basically. So I think what you should do is, if you're staking on a network, ETH is the biggest, learn a bit about how that works specifically so you understand it and are aware of it, and then try to pick the node operator that has a history of performing well. And there are bigger players here that, billion-dollar companies doing this at scale. So, yeah.
I just have a question about a few of the other proof of stake protocols, and maybe what your take is on things maybe like Near Protocol or Avalanche, and why the liquid staking landscape hasn't really taken off there. And is that something maybe to look at as a possibility in the future? Is just like the collateral underneath just not sufficient for anybody to warrant using it?
Yeah, I think there are companies I'm aware of that are building like liquid staking solutions for other networks. They're just not as big or well known. And Ethereum had a huge drive to create a liquid staking product because it was completely illiquid until the merge, and no one could withdraw that had staked. And so these solutions popped up. It's really just a supply and a demand kind of issue. If people want to do it, there will be businesses that provide that service, and some are trying to do it. You probably don't hear about it too much because it's not very big. I don't know of any that do it on Near or Avalanche. There are protocols where you have to stake for a year, and you can't stake like in ICP. You stake for a year and that's it. And there's no liquid staking solution for that yet. So it's probably just not a big enough dollar value for someone to think, oh, this is a market I want to try and solve a problem for.
I can think of Near Protocol has, I think the biggest is called Linear. Avalanche has Benki, is the biggest one I believe there.
Yeah.
And then of course with Solana, Jito, and Marinade are both kind of interesting ones to look at as well, I think. Thank you very much.
Has Binance or other centralized exchanges looked into getting into the restaking game at all, or is that just a different situation?
They will, and they are. I don't work at Binance Global or Coinbase, but they definitely are. It's already a $10 billion industry, right? Yeah. That's enough, right? I think.
How would that compare to, like, eigenlayer smart contract versus doing it through a centralized entity? Like, would that be very different, or that not really?
All that I've heard is that they're looking to do it through eigenlayer so far. They're not looking to replicate it and copy it that I'm aware of. But they could be.
What would be the biggest difference between, like, proof of history on Solana that goes down often versus something like Ethereum that tends to be a little bit more consistent versus something like Tendermint on Cosmos? Like, what would you say are the biggest difference between, or even like Binance Smart Chain? Like, they're all technically still proof of stake, but they have those variances.
Yeah, they all call it a different name, right? And again, it's just, I'm most familiar with Binance out of those you mentioned, that there's a lot of, particularly Atom, it's how it is, but there are many different Cosmos-based proof of stake variant blockchains. Yeah, they're just giving it a name. It's a brand. It's all kind of based on the same thing, but they're using different rules. So some of those factors we talked about, they determine how many people are able to participate in BNB. For example, you can have 21 nodes active at any time, and they're trying to double that. I think they might have doubled it recently, but it's still limited. Ethereum has, I think, 100,000 plus now. I actually don't know the specific number. And with Solana, why it goes down, I don't know actually. Why does Solana go down? Do you know? I think they just hold the network. Too many transactions in the mempool or something. I don't know.
It's because when there's consensus issues,
Mike.
they don't prioritize liveness.
Yeah, so they prioritize solving
they
the
prioritize,
consensus.
Like, correctness.
Take the
Yeah.
mic.
Yeah, whereas Ethereum is more allowing of compromises there.
Yeah.
Take the mic.
I'll defend Solana a bit and say that every time it's been a different issue. First, and the second is that they only have one client at the moment. So if there's a bug in that client or that affects the client, everything, the whole mainnet beta cluster has to reboot and jump into an IRC channel and or Slack or something like that and figure out how to restart.
That's what Fire Dancer's for. Client
Then
diversity.
there'll be two clients soon.
Okay.
We all done for questions?
So.
Alrighty. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Big round of applause for Zach. And yeah, if there's a POAP as well. So for everybody here, please go over to the black sign right by the Doodles rug. Tap your phone on it. Mint your POAP. There's a few available here today, so please go and do that to commemorate the Exploring Staking talk here today. And yeah, you feel free to stick around for a little bit, and please fold up your chairs and just stuck them behind the door there. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you.